welcome back to another Artifact Corner. Today we will be looking at a really interesting relic from the home's past. This is the front page of a newspaper called the Plattsburgh Republican, published on October 29, 1814. This was published a little over a month after the Battle of Plattsburgh. There is a section on the front page proposing an engraving be done to celebrate, and I quote, "the glorious naval victory obtained by the brave Commodore Macdonough over the British Squadron of far superior force on Lake Champlain." It's likely that Henry Delord saved this newspaper because of his pride at the American force's victory and his friendship with Commander of the American Fleet, Thomas Macdonough. Let's learn a bit more about the history of newspapers in America. Europeans arrived in the Americas in 1607 in what is now Jamestown, Virginia. Communication between the new colonies in Europe was slow. News in that time was often spread by word of mouth or was posted at the local church or public house. The first colonial newspaper in America was published in Boston on September 25, 1690, and called Public Occurrences Both Foreign and Domestic. The British suppressed the publication, so only one edition was ever produced. In 1704, the governor allowed the Boston Newsletter, a weekly, to be published, and it became the first continuously published newspaper in the colonies. Soon after, weekly papers began publishing in New York and Philadelphia. Merchants at this time also published their own papers, advertising goods and also posting shipping arrivals and departures. During the American Revolution, weekly publications became a stronghold for patriotism, although there were a few loyalist publications. Newspapers became a form of public property in the 1800s. Americans believed that as citizens they had a right to the information contained in newspapers without paying. To gain access, readers subverted the subscription system by refusing to pay, borrowing, or even stealing newspapers. Editors, however, tolerated these tactics because they wanted longer subscription lists. In the 1830s, new high-speed presses allowed the cheap printing of tens of thousands of papers a day. Also in the 1830s, newspapers moved away from outright partisanship and devoted most of their coverage to news and current events. The 1850s was a critical decade in American history, and the major cities and many large towns began to boast high-quality newspapers. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, the newspapers, especially in the North, responded quickly. A staple of Civil War-era newspapers, and perhaps the most vital public service, was unfortunately the publication of casualty lists. After every major action, newspapers would publish many columns listing the soldiers who had been killed or wounded. As the 19th century ended, the newspaper business had grown enormously since the days when one-man newspapers printed hundreds, or at most, thousands of issues. Americans became a nation addicted to newspapers, and in the era before broadcast journalism, newspapers were a considerable force in public life. With the invention of radio, then television, and finally the internet, newspapers started to become less relevant in people's lives. Many newspapers today have gone to online-only formats or a hybrid of printed papers and online subscriptions. Our newspaper page is in remarkable condition for being 212 years old. It's an incredible piece of Regency-era history, and we are so lucky to have it in our collections. Thanks so much for stopping by.